I'm Stephanie and let's talk books. So today we're going to be talking about A Memory of Light, which is the last book in the Wheel of Time series, which is super exciting because it means that I have finally finished the Wheel of Time. Woohoo! This is going to be a super spoilery chat, so if you do not want to be spoiled for the Wheel of Time, then you might want to go and read it and come back to this video later. So my overall thoughts on the A Memory of Light are fairly similar to my thoughts on the whole series, which is very mixed. I've had an interesting experience with the series in that the things that I like and the things that are really good, and the things that I don't like and that are bad are really bad. So let's start off with some positive things. We want to talk about Tarmin Gaiden, which is the last battle. So for this whole series, we've been building to this idea that there is supposed to be this grand, epic battle to end all battles at the end of the series, where we're going to have the final confrontation between Rand and the Dark One. And it was big. It was epic. There was a lot of stuff going on. So we have this interesting setup where we have this grand four-front battle, plus you have Rand with his battle with the Dark One in the cave, and you also have Perrin doing his own stuff in the Wolf Dream. So in true Robert Jordan style, you got lots of perspectives, lots of stuff is going on, there's a lot of action. I found it interesting that this battle that he set up really focused a lot on the tactics side, where that was very important, and less on the one-on-one, like following one or a couple of characters actually on the field. We had a lot of time that was spent back with the leaders and the generals and working on tactics. I thought this was a great way to highlight Matt's strength, given that we have Matt that has all of this military tactical knowledge from ancient warriors of the past, and I thought that was really cool and different. Now, while I thought it was cool and different, that might be because I don't read a lot of military inspired fantasy or science fiction, because I don't tend to like it. So for me, while I thought it was interesting and different to have more of a tactics based approach to this final battle, it did kind of drag for me because I just am not that interested in tactics. The other issue that I had with the battle sequences were the fact that Robert Jordan had a very particular way that he would use to describe sword fights, and he didn't use sort of the standard, like, describing exactly what moves everybody did. He took more of kind of a poetic approach, where instead of saying, like, he slashed downward and whacked the other guy in the arm, he would use some sort of flowery sword form move name, like Falling Cherry Blossom or Wind Over the Water. So it was very kind of an atmospheric, and this is something that he has done from the beginning of the series. Unfortunately, when it came to the big battle, again, I felt very lost because I don't know what Falling Cherry Blossom or Wind Over the Water looks like. It was very kind of difficult for me to follow what was going on, and that sort of flowery sword fighting description got really old for me. There were definitely a couple of places where I felt like it really worked. There was a specific scene where Tam was fighting and we were following him, and I thought that that sword fighting description style fit very well with his character and how he fought, and it really worked for me. But overall, that being used for everybody was a bit much, and I think I would have preferred if we could have dialed back on that a little bit and done some more traditional combat descriptions just to help follow along. Again, we have this huge battle on four fronts with all these different characters trying to keep track of what's going on, and again, it was just kind of a little bit confusing for me, and being that I'm not super into military stuff, my brain did in fact wander during the final battle, which is not what you want. But I do think that if you are more into military and particularly tactics aspects of things, that this would have hit really well. And also the sword fighting description style very much reminded me of kind of the samurai thing. So I think if you have an interest in that, that might work better for you. But just, yeah. It was big, it was epic, but maybe just not my favorite. Another thing that I noticed with this book, as well as the last couple of books, is the accents that the audiobook narrators were using have gotten kind of odd. Now, there have been some issues with the audiobooks, particularly with the pronunciations of the names, as they kind of waver back and forth in the books. I mean, the series was published over a long period of time, so I get that it's not going to be as consistent as maybe a trilogy that is going to be narrated 3 years back to back, but it just kind of threw me off at the end of this experience because characters were starting to have different accents they never had before, and it was just kind of odd. So let's move on from the battle and talk a little bit about Perrin and his adventures in the Wolf Dream. I'm so happy that this is a part of Perrin's story that has come back, because he kind of had the Wolf Dream at the beginning of the series. It kind of didn't have anything to do with the middle, especially the slog, where Perrin's story is not the most exciting, but now it's come back and I'm very excited about that. I really enjoyed that part in the story following Perrin, and I really love Perrin, so that was great. I also love that it was very different and distinct from what was going on with a lot of the other action, which would kind of just blend together into mush in my brain. Like that we have kind of had an evolution of Perrin's Wolf Dream abilities, and we've seen him change and grow, and this is kind of the final culmination of his story, and we really get to see him use his abilities to their fullest potential, and I really enjoyed that. So then the last kind of chunk of the battle is Rand fighting the Dark One with Nynaeve and Moiraine there. And this was a part that, again, I have really mixed feelings about. I liked that Robert Jordan decided to go in a different direction than sort of your traditional, let's say, like sword versus great evil one that we typically get in fantasy. I really liked the use of the visions as a part of this battle, where Rand and the Dark One are kind of sucking each other into their different visions of the future. Thought that played really well with the use of visions throughout the rest of the series, and really kind of tied that whole idea together, and I really liked that. And I thought it was definitely, again, different and interesting. It's something that I don't see a whole lot. Unfortunately, a lot of the time that Rand was battling the Dark One, it was just boring. He was just there, like, in his pose, like, doing some sort of weird brain magic thingy against the Dark One. And there wasn't really a lot to see. I think this has a lot to do with the fact that of all of the characters in the Wheel of Time, the Dark One is actually one of the least developed. I feel like I still don't know a lot about him. He's sort of just this great mystery evil who, for whatever reason, wants to destroy everything and the Wheel of Time and all the things, and he just wants to destroy it. He's really off stage for like the entire series. He works through his minions. He's got the Trollocs. He's got his chosen ones. We don't ever really get to see him very much, and even to the point where we know that he's been trying to get out of his prison and breaking the seals, but at the beginning of the last book, our heroes still have some of the seals, and they're not broken. And they're not actually broken till like almost the end of the book. And by almost the end of the book, I mean real close to the end. Rand's down there and fighting and, you know, doing his battling, and they're having visions and whatever's going down there, and Dark One's still in his prison. And he doesn't ever really get to get out. The seals are broken, and so I guess technically you can say he gets out, but like almost immediately he gets like sealed back in there. So I do wish that we could have gotten to really see the Dark One and have him come out and have a more easy to follow along battle. I mean, they even had to bring in another bad guy for Rand to fight while he was fighting the Dark One, just so we get like a little bit more action going on. So again, it's been a theme with this series, is the stuff that actually has to do with Rand, which is the stuff I'm most excited about, is kind of the most disappointing. Again, some stuff I really liked, some stuff I didn't like. I liked that he paired up with Nynaeve and Moiraine and that they were there, and there was some stuff going on with that. But yeah, overall, I just feel like it didn't quite hit the mark for me for what I was expecting for the Rand and Dark One battle. Tarmangard itself, super big, huge, lots of action, stuff going on, but Rand actually facing off against the Dark One was, I don't know, a little anticlimactic. And I will be really curious to see how the TV show handles the Rand versus the Dark One fight. That is assuming that the TV show goes long enough that we get to see the end of the series, which is, a big question mark. But that was a thought that I had when I was reading this book, is I'm not sure how they're going to show this in a way that makes it exciting for TV, because I just don't think it'll translate well. Another thing that I found interesting with Rand's battle is there were some specific moments in this book that made me feel like a lot of the stuff that was going on was kind of pointless. There was a specific moment I remember in one of the battles. I can't remember which characters were having this discussion, but some of the characters were having a discussion, and they said, summary form, they said, well, it doesn't really matter if we win or lose here, because it still only matters if Rand defeats the Dark One or not. Which makes sense, because if they slay all the Trollocs, but the Dark One wins, then they're all going to die anyways. And if the Trollocs are kicking their butt and Rand wins, well, then the Trollocs are going to die anyways. So that aspect of it did kind of give me a little bit of a, well, this big epic battle is pretty cool and all, but it does seem a little bit pointless. So let's talk about some of the characters and some character moments that I liked or didn't like. I really loved Matt in this book. He was great. I loved his scene on the Rockin'. That was really cool. It was a great Matt moment for me. Matt is hands down my favorite character. I also really like Perrin, but Matt is awesome. I also loved how much of Oliver that we got, and I really appreciated that Robert Jordan gave him an active part to play in the last battle. I would have loved to get an Oliver book that's set maybe 10 or 15 years in the future when he's an adult, and I want to know how this kid turns out. His relationship with Matt is so interesting, and it's hilarious, especially because of Matt being like a really bad narrator and not understanding that it's him who's the one that's influencing Oliver to be this sort of little rascally kid that he is. And I think that would be so great. Again, one of the many, many things that I would have loved as sort of a Wheel of Time spin-off that we will never get, because unfortunately Robert Jordan has passed away, but I was glad that he did have an important part to play in the final battle, and he wasn't just kind of this random character who's just been tagging along for no reason. I also really liked Andral and Pavara. Those are two characters that have come to more prominence in the last couple of books, and whenever their scenes came up together, I found myself really enjoying them, and I found their story really fascinating, and I do wish that I had been able to connect with more of the side characters the way I connected with them and their story, because I think that would have made the series a lot more enjoyable. Egwene had some cringy moments for me in this book. So much that I had to write them down because they bothered me so much. There is a point at which she makes a comment about how any Aes Sedai could go without a warder was beyond her. Now let's think about the woman who just said this statement. This is a woman who's not been Aes Sedai for very long. Yes, she is powerful. Yes, she is in charge. Yes, she knows some stuff. But she hasn't been at it that long. And she hasn't had a warder for that long. And let's go back to think about how she got her warder. She done treated him so bad and refused to take him as her warder, even though while she was not yet an Aes Sedai and couldn't do that, they hooked up, they were gonna be together, there was no relationship drama, there were some circumstances that were keeping them apart, but their relationship was fine, and finally, she's a full Aes Sedai, she's in charge, she can take him as his warder, and she doesn't for reasons, really stupid reasons, and it's very childish the way that she treats him, and I don't like that. I wish she would have just talked to the dude. It's one of those things, if they had both just sat down for half an hour and talked it out, they could have worked everything out. And the fact that she would say that, ooh, it irked me. Girl, don't talk about stuff you don't know. I get it, she's young, but I want to smack her. Probably shouldn't, because she'll probably, beat me up with a wave of air, but I want to smack the girl. She also has a thing that she says about Matt, and she mentions that Matt is always trying to look out for people who don't need to be looked out for, and I feel like that sentiment can be applied to just about everything that I do. They're very much like busybodies, like putting their nose in everywhere, thinking that they know how to run everyone's life better than they do. And that's a consistent theme that I see throughout the book. Nynaeve does this a lot, and the way that the Aes Sedai are all trying to micromanage Rand is something that I don't like, and again, it's just something that annoyed me. I'm like, oh, would you just think about what you said and see how it applies to yourself? So, yeah, those were some cringy moments there. One thing I did really like in this book was that people died. Now, let me explain to you what I mean by I'm super excited that people are dying. A lot of times in fantasy stories, you will have these big, epic, world-shaking events, and at the end of your story, all of your main characters are just fine. Nobody's maimed, nobody's dead, except maybe that one side character that nobody liked. And if somebody did die, they probably got brought back from the dead. And Robert Jordan has already proved he's not afraid to name a bunch of his characters. Matt's lost an eyeball, Rand's lost a hand, and I was super excited that he actually killed off a bunch of people. I was particularly excited that he killed off Egwene because she was one of the Emmonsfield Five, and that was not something that I thought that your average fantasy writer would do. They would keep that core group safe. So that aspect of it I was very happy about. I did notice that he tended to kill people off in pairs. So if one half of the love interest died, the other one was also bound to die. So he's not afraid to kill people, but he's afraid of leaving people as widows or widowers. But minor thing, we already know that Robert Jordan is not the greatest when it comes to romance plot lines, but I was very excited that the stakes of this battle were so big that important people that we cared about were actually going to give their lives and or be horribly maimed to save the world. There were quite a few new plot threads that were opened in this book, which I was not expecting, because we already have a lot of stuff going on. Robert Jordan throughout this series is constantly juggling so much stuff. I think that's one of the things that is really cool and unique about this series is there's a lot going on. Everything is just a lot. A lot of characters, lots of plot lines, lots of different civilizations and countries and political stuff going on to keep track of. And so while I was actually impressed with the number of things that had happened earlier in the series that were brought into this final battle and actually addressed and wrapped up, I was surprised that we got so much new stuff. I mean, at this point, we already have a whole new continent, a new civilization with different creatures and all kind of stuff that we didn't know about, that the Randland people didn't know about. They came over and they've been fighting, causing havoc and all this stuff going on. And in book 14, Robert Jordan's like, let's do that again. Other side of the planet will have another civilization that nobody has ever heard of, and we don't know what's going on, and they have their own weird stuff, and we're just going to throw them in this battle because we just need more stuff going on. So I do wish that if that was something that Robert Jordan was going to do, he would have introduced that a little bit earlier. I really feel like this book would have been more satisfying if we would have not added as much new stuff and spent more time wrapping up stuff, because I'm sure between the stuff that I am forgetting and the stuff that just hasn't been talked about for 6 books that just kind of be left dangling, there's some stuff that didn't get addressed, and I do wish that would have happened because my brain just didn't have space for any more stuff at this point in the story, and I feel like I wasn't really able to get a feel for this new culture and the people and really get to understand them the way that I have with a lot of the other cultures that Robert Jordan has in this book. And I think that's one of his strengths, is his world is big and interesting, and you get to go around and explore different parts of the world and different cultures and how they interact with other cultures. And I felt like it wasn't maybe the best use of his surprise, hey, there's another civilization over there that nobody knows about. Another thing that I really noticed about Robert Jordan's writing style in this book is that apparently he does not like falling action. So this is all the stuff that happens after the climax. I have noticed throughout the series he does tend to try to at least make the very end of his books very exciting. Now, I personally don't feel like he is as successful at this as, say, Brandon Sanderson is, especially if you look at the Stormlight Archives. That series consistently, the last like 15-20% is just like brain exploding. And I feel like that's kind of what Robert Jordan shoots for. But then his books just kind of end. And I was listening to this one. This is when I happened to be listening to the audiobook on a CD, so I kept like swapping out CDs in my CD player. And we're getting closer and closer to the end. And I'm like, this is an epic 14-book series, which has approximately 8 million characters and plot lines and things going on. And I'm still invested enough that I care about these characters, and I kind of want to know what happens to them after, whether or not the world is destroyed. I mean, I do want to know whether the world gets destroyed or not, but I also want to know the status of the world and these characters and all the countries and things afterwards. And I'm getting closer, and fewer and few discs, and I'm like, put in the last disc, and Rand is still fighting the Dark One. And unfortunately, we don't get a lot of those answers in this book. We don't get to know long-term what happens to these characters. We have the whole thing where Aviendha has these visions of the future and these terrible things that happen to her people in the future, and she wants to avert that. We don't get any answers about that. We don't really get any answers about this treaty that Rand put into place, whether that gets upheld. Does everybody get along and they work things out and we have this great big beautiful, optimistic future? We do know that human beings are still there. They're alive, and the Dark One has been resealed for another however many generations until he starts to break out again, because that's what the wheel does. But I do really wish that we could have gotten more. I would love to know what happens with the Aes Sedai and the Black Tower, the Ashaman. Like, how does that develop going forward in this world where we now have men who have the ability to channel without going crazy? How is it going to change society and culture? And been a lot of friction between the White Tower and the Black Tower, and I would love to see how a little bit more of how that would have evolved. Yeah, and just a lot of stuff that we don't really get answers for. And this may have been a thing that was one of the parts that Robert Jordan didn't get to lay out before he passed away, so there was only so much that Brandon Sanderson had to work from, and decided to kind of not make up any of that stuff on his own, but just given Robert Jordan's writing style in the rest of the series that he wrote alone, I it does kind of fit with how he likes to write, and I do wish, at least for this book, we could have gotten a couple of chapters afterwards to spend with some of these different groups of characters where they could at least been maybe talking about these things or starting to put the world back together after this huge battle where all these people have died. And I think that was something that I would really, really have loved to have seen in this book. One more thing about the ending. Like, I'm sure many of you, I have certain tropes that I hate, that I really despise, that if an author uses, I'm probably not going to like. One of those things is bringing people back from the dead. My rule with bringing people back from the dead is you get to do it one time. And it better be good. Save it for something really important, and you better make me believe it and give me a good reason for that person to come back from the dead. What usually happens is you have all of this pressure and this emotions, and is this character going to die? Are they not going to die? And then they finally die, and then you're like crying and you're upset and you're heartbroken, and then the author's like, gotcha! They're alive! Surprise! Why are they alive? They just are. Just don't worry about that. They're alive. Be happy again. And Robert Jordan does that a little bit here. So throughout this entire series, we have been beaten over the head with the fact that Rand is going to die. It constantly comes up again and again and again that in order to defeat the Dark One, Rand is going to have to sacrifice himself. And I was okay with that. I liked that. I thought that fit very well with his character. I liked the fact that he was kind of selfless enough that he was going to do that and was willing to put himself on the line. Again, with this extreme pressure that keeps coming up again and again. He's going to die. He's going to die. Everybody knows he's going to die. We even have this huge epic sequence where Rand goes off to the mountains and he's dealing with his emotional struggles because he's in a really dark place and he's having issues and he still thinks he's crazy even though the taint is gone. And at the end of that, the thing that we are told that helps him get over his mental issues and have good mental health again is the fact that he accepts that he's going to die. Now this is something I talked about in a previous review that didn't sit well with me because I never felt like that was Rand's problem. I felt like more of the problem that Rand was having is that people were trying to micromanage him and they weren't letting him be the hero and be the leader that he needed to be, and that he felt like a lot of the people just wanted to control him as kind of like a lamb for the slaughter. Like they're just gonna carry him in a cushioned box to the last battle and then dump him in and let him die. But I never felt like he was unwilling to sacrifice himself. And then he does. He dies. Then we find out he's not actually dead because his love harem is still super perky and excited and happy after everything. And they're like, why are they so happy? And then we find out, oh, Rand's soul got sucked into somebody else's body. And I was like, what? When did this happen? What does the magic have to do with the soul? I don't know. And felt like it wasn't explained at all, that it didn't really line up with what we knew about the magic system and how the magic system worked. Now, since I have finished the series, and I don't need to worry about spoilers, I have been delving a little bit into the depths of YouTube. So I've been kind of stockpiling spoilery videos to watch once I finish the series. And I have watched some videos where people have tried to explain what was going on and why it was going on, but I feel like a lot of it's a stretch. And for something that big to work, again with this trope of bringing people back from the dead that I didn't like, it needs to be set up better and it needs to be explained better. And the other thing is I wasn't rooting for Rand to ride off in the sunset with his love harem. I wasn't. I really wanted one of them to die, one of the four of them to die. I was okay with it was Rand or one of the ladies. I did not like that part of the romance. The way that the three women treated their relationship with Rand was gross and disgusting. And again, that's something else I've talked about throughout the series. But I feel like this bringing Rand back from the dead was just kind of him being like, oh, maybe I don't actually want to kill Rand at the end of this. And yeah, I didn't like it. I did like how he brought Moraine back. I thought that was well done. I thought that was interesting. That was something that I totally bought and I was okay with. And that was his one time to bring somebody back from the dead. And he done it again. And the second time wasn't as good. I think part of the thing that I liked more about Moraine coming back from the dead is that it was an effort. There was a cost to it. Rand and his group of dudes had to go. They had to rescue her with great danger. Somebody died. Rand lost an eyeball. So there were some serious consequences to this, and it didn't just come for free. Where I felt like Rand coming back from the dead was cheap. It had no cost whatsoever, and like I said, didn't feel very well explained or even make a lot of sense. So I really would have preferred the ending if he would have just left off that last bit and just left Rand to be dead. But I also like when characters actually die, so I'm sure there are some people out there who were very excited that Rand did not actually have to die and they didn't feel like he deserved to die. And that's cool. I hope you enjoy imagining all the adventures that Rand gets to do for the rest of his life. So that's it. Those are some of my many thoughts on A Memory of Light. It was an epic journey to get here. I had to take a couple of weeks off between finishing the book and filming this video because I needed to kind of sit and think about some of these things for a while. It took me 16 months to read the series, which is a long time. That was a good bit of my life that I spent so heavily invested in the story and these characters. And it was kind of a surreal feeling to finish the series. So I am planning on doing one more video on the Wheel of Time and my big giant read through. I want to just share some thoughts and kind of discuss the series as a whole. What are some of the strengths I see, some of the weaknesses, kind of talk about who I would recommend read this series and who wouldn't, and just kind of my overall thoughts about the story. But stay around for that, and until next time, thanks for watching.